Welcome back to PHP Fundamentals. So in the last few lessons, we've been talking about databases. We built the beginnings of what could be maybe a class, but right now we're just storing them within some functions, simply something to connect to a DB, to query it, and just a convenience function to quickly grab all of the rows from a table if that's something that you want to do. All right, but now we need to continue doing stuff that you might actually do in the real world rather than just covering concepts. So in this lesson, and maybe the next, I want to focus on, it's almost cliche at this point, but it's a cliche because it really is a good learning exercise. So let's see how we could go about building the beginnings of a blog. How could you add posts? How could you display all the posts on the page? How could you view a specific post? Things like that. And luckily, we already have a good start, at least when it comes to connecting to the database. So now we have our index.php. This will be our controller. So the first thing I want to do is require the functions.php file, right? Next, I need to, let's think about this. Well, we need to create a database for the blog, right? We also need to create a table for posts, right? You would also want to do one for comments, but we're going to save that. So create a database, create a table for the comments, for the posts. Next, we're going to fetch all the posts, and then filter through and display on the page. All right, well, that seems simple enough. Let's get started. I will open the terminal. Show databases. We just have a handful here. I'm going to drop the database. This is how we delete one, practice, because we're no longer doing it. And I'm also going to drop that database blog that we did a few examples ago. So now we can create a fresh database blog. Next, we're going to create a table. So let's just come back. We created the database, check. Next, create the table. Create table, posts, ID is integer, the title. You know what? Let's do varchar 255 in this case. The body should be text. And I need to remember, I almost did it again, ID should be auto increment. Finally, we set the primary key equal to the ID. Run that, and now describe posts. We have created the table. It's very simple, too simple, but it's good for our needs. All right, so now create a table for posts, check. Now we need to fetch all posts, but we don't have any. So let's add some to get us started. Insert into posts. We're going to insert the title and the body. The values will be my first post, and here is the body of the first post. That looks good. Let's do one more. Insert into posts. Values, PHP isn't, and I need to escape that because I'm having that within the string. Too hard. And then once again, here is the body for the second post. There we go. So now if I select star from posts, there we go. We accidentally added that / but it doesn't matter. All right, so now we created the database. We created the posts. We need to fetch all the posts is our next step. All right, so let's do that. We have our function, so let's see which one we need. Well, we first need to connect to the database. So let's do that right now. And we forgot to add that. Connect to the DB. All right, well, let's do connect. And if we come back, we see, if I hide the sidebar, we just need to pass our config options, which we've already set. So let's run it. Connect with config. And now we can see that it is going to return our connection. So we will save that like so. We also know that if we don't connect and there's an error, we're going to return false. So I can say, if there was not a connection, we can do whatever we want. You can throw an error, you can redirect somewhere. In this case, we'll just say die problem connecting to the DB. We're just going to halt the execution. But you may not want to do that in a real-world situation. You could redirect to a 404 page, whatever you want to do. Let's test this out now. Now we're getting this error called undefined function connect. And that's because I forgot that in the previous lesson, I gave you a quick rundown on namespacing. Now, in a real-world situation, these would likely be within a class, and maybe the class is namespaced under your app/DB. But it's okay if we're using functions here. The main thing is you just want to get this idea of namespacing into your brain. So let's make sure that we use blog DB like that. Now we can access it like so. Run it one more time, and we're getting our next error. It's trying to connect to the DB practice, but if we come back, we can see that we're actually using the new blog. And if you want, you could even make that a setting that you pass to connect, like this. Database, blog. Then you could tack that on. Config database. One more time, and now we've connected, there's no errors. The next step is we've connected to the database, we've stored it within our connection. If there was not a connection, we die. The next step is to fetch all the posts. So now we'll use the query, or if we just want to grab everything, we could just use the get. It's really probably not a good idea though to fetch all of the rows. Imagine this blog has over 1,000 posts. Well, that's going to select 1,000 rows from the database. But at any given time on your blog, you may only want to display 8 or 9. So why would you get 1,000 rows only to display 8 or 9 posts, right? Well, one thing you could do is you could say get table name, you pass the connection, and then maybe as the third parameter, you could pass a limit. And we'll set that to a default of 10. Now when we run it, we say select star from table name, limit, limit. And this would be okay just as long as you are always the person who is setting these values. If the user is supplying the values, then you need to be a little bit more cautious and you should use prepared statements like this, where you're binding the values. All right, so now let's try it. We're going to get from the post table. What's our next parameter? It wants the connection. And then the third parameter is how many should we fetch? Now, if we do not add anything like that, it would error out, and that's because it's expecting limit. And that's why I'm setting a default like so. That way I can override it by maybe fetching 5 or 15, or if I leave it blank entirely, it will use the default of 10. All right, so we've grabbed the posts. Let's store that within a variable. Let's var dump posts, and let's see what we get. Reload the page, undefined function get, yep, one more time, add the namespace on. There we go, there's our object. So let's try to filter through them for each post as post. Print our post. One more time, view the source, and now we have our 2 posts. Great. But let's make sure the limit is working. So if I come back and I say only grab 1, reload, now the limit is working. So we'll leave that blank though, because 10 is good. So the next step is we have grabbed all the posts. Now we need to filter through and display on, and we'll change this to display in the view. So let's include index.view.php or template, whatever you want to call it. So now let's add it, index.view.php. You could also store these within a views folder. Anything goes. It's just up to you to organize how you think is best. So now we've fetched everything. We now have this post variable. Let's go ahead and add some HTML. And you would probably have a layout file, but this is okay. And now we'll say the blog, and now we can filter through it. So PHP for each post as post. And for each, I'm using the shorthand here. Now I can say we will add an article, and within it we'll have an H2, and we'll echo post title, like that. Reload the page, there we go. The blog, you'd style that how you want. Now we have my first post and my second post. And let's have, maybe within a div, we'll give it a class of body just in case you need to hook into it with your CSS. And now we'll do post body. One more time, and now, great, we have our blog and we filtered through it. So now the cool thing is we can say insert into posts, title body, values, my third post. This is not that hard, is it? There we go. Now I come back, we've updated the table, and now that's being reflected on the page. All right, so that's the first part. In the next lesson, I'm going to show you how we can link. Because right now we have the view, but what about when we want to view the post in its entirety? And that's another thing. Right now, our body is very short, but yours would probably be much longer. But what we're doing here is we're just displaying the entire body, but we should try to display an excerpt or something like that. So we will handle all of that in the next lesson. See you there.